Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Chicks, One Show, where we break down, recap, review one episode of a currently airing show, an episode a week as it airs. I got to remember how that intro goes. We haven't really been using it the last few months, but we are back on the wagon. We are recapping Agent Carter is our one show. My name is Tricia and she's Kait Calabro. We are your two chicks. And Kait, take it away. Let's talk about the most recent episode of Agent Carter, episode 3.
Yeah, so after the heels of our two-part season 2 premiere, it is assumed that Dr. Wilkes has perished due to zero matter. I always want to say zero gravity, but I know that's not it. It's zero matter. And is now off on this to avenge what Whitney Frost might know. She, of course, enlists the help of her super genius best friend, Howard Stark, to help her get into a secret society. And they eventually find out that Dr. Wilkes is, in fact, invisible. But if Howard Nerf gun-esque / water gun device with a special spray, he becomes visible.
Yes, essentially, they develop Dr. Wilkes. You keep cutting in and out a little bit, so we might have lost a few of the words in there. But for the most part, I think we got the gist. So when we pick up this episode, it's pretty much the morning after the explosion at Isodyne Energy, with Dr. Wilkes presumed dead and Whitney Frost with a deadly scratch on her head. And so we sort of launch into almost sort of a new system for our main characters, because everyone's favorite asshole chief, Jack, shows up. Peggy's feeling really, responsible for what happened to Wilkes, and she liked him, so that doesn't help. And Daniel is trying to get Jack off his turf, and Jack's basically just being a jerk.
Yeah.
You and I have very different opinions on whether or not Jack is being a jerk.
I mean, no, Jack is a jerk. I wouldn't say that Jack isn't a jerk, but I think his
we lost you again. What's that?
Am I back? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not happening on my side, so I have no idea.
No, it's only happening. Well, it's happening on your side, but I'm the only one that.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Usually when I freeze, I can tell when I'm frozen.
No. So sorry. We were talking about whether or not Jack is a jerk.
I mean, I think Jack is a jerk, but I don't know if it's kind of like a defense mechanism.
I mean, yeah, sure, it's probably a defense mechanism, but at this point, he really annoys me. I'm still in the camp that we've been in since last season, where I could see him being the ultimate, the guy that Peggy marries or whatever, but I don't. Right now, he's just an asshole, and I really don't care. I see where they're going with it, but it's just.
I feel like he's kind of involved, in the beginning of season 1, and pretty much for all of season 1, he was just this one-dimensional jackass. Whereas now, I think they're giving him a little bit more of a heavy weight on his character, because we're seeing a lot more Jack than I think we have before.
Yeah, I agree. We're seeing more Jack. We're seeing more stuff for him to do. So I'm not saying that he's a jerk in a way that he's not an interesting character. I mean, he's got more stuff to do this season, I guess. He's not being, his one-dimensional sexist self. He's just being his opportunist self. We're seeing a sort of different side of him than we saw last season. I just don't like him.
Well, that's understandable. I mean, I don't think a lot of people like Jack.
No, and I don't think you're necessarily supposed to like him. I feel like you kind of feel bad for him. I don't.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm very tormented by Jack.
I have a hard time with characters who, and people in general. I mean, it's an archetype of the character who grew up with a silver spoon, or at least a lot of opportunities, which he obviously did, and who, because of that, have no moral compass.
But I could argue that he does.
I mean, he has a moral compass. Like, he feels guilt, but he's still an ass.
Mhm.
And like he's an ass because he's been given all these opportunities, so he like doesn't care that when he says shit to people that it hurts them, or that he's being an idiot to Peggy because he just feels like that's just how it is.
Yeah, but I feel like he's gotten better. Like
Yeah, he's gotten better. I'm just telling you like why I don't really care for his character. Like it'll be nice to see if he evolves and becomes a little more morally centered than he
Mhm.
currently is. I mean, obviously we saw some change in this episode. I mean, he shows up at the SSR and he basically is just being a jerk
Mhm.
um to everyone. He's like just making fun of Sousa and he's yelling at Peggy, and then Peggy turns it around on him, and then he basically just stops talking to her.
Yeah. He does call Peggy Marge, which I liked. I thought that was funny. Um,
um yeah, so he basically shows up and he's like, this case is closed, so Sousa, you basically suck, and Peggy, you need to go back to New York.
yeah,
And they're both like, just screw you, go away.
pretty much. And then, like, I guess Daniel has nothing of the SSR in on the West Coast and decides to like go rogue with Peggy.
Basically, yeah. I mean, and I feel like he's kind of doing it out of spite.
I mean, I think it's Daniel's confusing to me. I really like my your dislike for Jack is probably equivalent to for my dislike for actually I think I dislike Daniel more than you
You
dislike Jack.
definitely dislike Daniel more than I dislike Jack.
I don't he's just swarmy to me. Like I don't trust him. I've called him a putz and I think he is a putz. Um but I mean it just like I think him going rogue with Peggy was to like show off to like stick it to the man.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in the sense that Jack is the man. I think he originally, like, eventually he gets proof when, they figure out that Wilkes is invisible and all this stuff. He gets proof that, yeah, there's more to this case. But I think it starts out as him just wanting to stick it to Jack.
Yeah, and to play that I support you 100%, Peggy. I'll do anything for you. Like it's just annoying. He's annoying
He's
to
a
me.
little puppy.
Yeah, of how much he like just is literally kissing Peggy's ass.
He would love to be kissing Peggy's ass.
Yeah.
Literally.
I mean,
But anyway, so they decide, of course, Peggy is always going to go rogue. I did enjoy the aren't you supposed to be on a plane to New York with Thompson today? And she says, I think I'm going to miss it.
mhm.
Um, that was just a nice line.
But
But
so did Jack.
yeah, Jack also missed it. Oh, we should point out that Jack is there because that FBI dude from the first episode told him to go out there.
Red Foreman.
Yes, Red Foreman. He must have a name, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's Red Foreman. It's Red Foreman SSR edition.
Oh goodness.
Um,
So yeah, he's out there to meet with essentially the secret society that Dottie was stealing from,
mhm.
and that the possible congressman slash guy who owns Isodyne,
Whitney
um,
Frost's husband.
Whitney Frost's husband, who really is what he is. He's a trophy husband.
Mhm.
Is to meet with him, and like it's basically they belong to the secret society, essentially with their little lapel pins,
Yeah.
that are power brokers.
They're just a bunch of old farty white guys that sit around and control the world.
Which
Like
totally still exist,
every evil organization starts with that.
especially in the Marvel universe.
Mhm.
So that's sort of where he's out here for. He meets with them, and then he sort of discovers that what Peggy's been saying about this organization this entire time is
Mhm.
actually true, and we sort of see that moment at the end of the episode where Jack becomes sort of suspicious of them, and I think that he's going to end up working from the inside.
I think that Jack might become like almost a double agent-esque kind of thing, like kind of how Peggy was last season with she was working for the SSR, but she was also trying to help Howard. Whereas
Right, she was working from the inside.
I think Jack might shut up. Might entrust Peggy with what he found out. I don't know if he's going to tell Danielle because I just don't think Danielle and Jack, but I feel like he might be like, listen, you were right. Don't tell anyone that I know that you want to work this angle.
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't think he's going to go rogue. I think he's going to come back and be like, so I figured this thing out. Well, I don't know if he's going to, honestly, because I don't know how much he wants to talk about.
I think he's going to, like, yeah, but I think he's definitely going to go to Peggy and be like, he's not going to tell her that she was right. He's going to be like, I was at this place and I saw the newspapers and blah, blah, like, he's going to take credit for it still.
He's going to find a way to take credit for it, even though there's no way he can take credit for it. Yeah.
But only to Peggy. Like, he's not going to tell anyone else.
Yeah, I definitely think that he'll end up working with them to sort of solve everything. I feel like they're going to keep the whole Wilkes is invisible thing from him, though.
Yeah.
So anyway, we should talk about the whole Wilkes is invisible storyline. In the beginning of the episode, Peggy's sort of like just feeling really guilty about it and thinking that, you know, he's dead and this is horrible. And she actually goes and visits Whitney Frost in her dressing room on the studio set and like threatens her a little bit. And they have sort of a standoff, which was kind of fun. And then she is back in the SSR and she's talking to Daniel and things start floating around her for some reason. And she's like, this is a side effect of zero matter. I'm contaminated. And then Stark has a lot of fun floating things on Peggy.
Yeah, I mean, I think before even any of that happens, Peggy finds Howard with Jarvis on the movie set, which was a great scene. And they kind of take it upon themselves to go visit this all-white male club. And Peggy's trying to place bugs in the club, and that's when she sees the newspapers, and the newspapers are marked for I think a day and a day two in advance.
It's the same day. It's for the next day, but two different headlines.
And that's when she goes back to the SSR and she tells Jack and Danielle, and then she tells Jack off, and then that sounded awful. And she that's when, after they storm out of yelling at Jack, that's when they discover that she has floating stuff around her.
Yeah.
And they go to Howard, and Howard's like just like a kid in the candy shop. He's like, this is amazing.
Yeah, basically. And I like the little conversation that Howard and Jarvis have where Howard realizes that Jarvis has more fun working for Peggy, and he's like, you know, you can do that, and if you need to, just let me know. And if you ever get tired of being my butler, is what he says. And Jarvis is like, sir, I really do enjoy my job. He's like, I know, I'm great, but so is she.
And then he talks about Velveeta cheese.
And then he talks about Velveeta cheese a lot, which is not cheese. It is a substance unto itself.
Yeah, it's liquid gold.
Anyway, so they come back and they do the investigation into like what's happening around Peggy. And that's all so fascinating, and a bunch of science that went in one ear and out the other. Something about gravity. I don't remember. I wasn't paying that close attention. But for some reason, Stark figures out that there's something invisible around her that he needs to now spray with silver nitrate.
Sure.
Like, I literally rewound the episode because I was like, wait, did we suddenly figure out that he's invisible? Because that seems like a leap. And they didn't. They literally just went from there's something affecting the gravity around you to there's something invisible, let's spray it with stuff.
I think initially they thought that it was a side effect of her being in the area after zero matter was exploded or released, or I don't know how you even describe what happens. Yeah. So I don't know, because when they do their science-y stuff on this show, like when they talk about, like, they talk all so fast.
Yeah.
So I can't, like, I'm just like, okay, yeah, let's just see how this plays out. Like, that's just like, I just sit there and I'm just like, okay. So yeah, so he just sprays him with some stuff, and then
silver nitrate.
Yeah, and you just automatically see Dr. Wilkes just standing there, which makes me believe, like, was when the things were floating, was he like behind Peggy with like his hands in between her arms? Because it was like right here.
I think he was just standing really close to her in hopes that he could like get through to her somehow. I was right about him being invisible, but I was wrong about him being intangible, because he is intangible. I figured they weren't going to go the intangible route because it was going to be too difficult to figure out that he was there. And technically I was right because they had no idea. They just sort of blindly sprayed silver nitrate into the air and a man appeared.
Yeah.
Essentially what they do, and I'm really not sure exactly how it works, is like, it seems almost like a reverse of the nuclear blast shadows at Hiroshima, where like they take the photons that should be there and they somehow bind them to the I don't understand how it works.
I don't understand how he's still visible now, because the first time they sprayed him, he disappeared.
Well, I think they sprayed him again, and then he's probably just redoing the mixture so that it's got something. I don't know. I didn't understand how they did it in the first place. I understand what's going on, but not why the heck it makes any sense.
The process. We don't get the process.
Yeah, like I understand that he's intangible, but you can see him, and the reason you can see him is because his photons are visible, but he's still not actually interacting with the phase. He's still like out of phase or something. I don't know. He should be going through the floor. That's all I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know, but we shouldn't dissect the science. This is Marvel. Who the hell knows? They created the quantum zone in Ant-Man, and that didn't make any sense at all, so whatever. But that movie was awesome. But anyway, so they know that Wilkes is still alive, and they're sort of trying to work with him to figure out how to bring him back.
Yeah. Oh, it should also be noted that, what's the company that made Zero Matter called?
Isodyne?
Isodyne released in the newspapers that Wilkes was a communist.
Was a communist, yeah, because that's a surefire way in 1947 to discredit anyone, especially a black man.
Exactly. So, and he's dead. So I think they're going to just keep him dead until they can make him visible. If that's even possible.
Yeah, essentially they're going to just pretend that he's dead until they can bring him back, and then it'll be a whole big surprise in a showdown. But he, I was going to say something specific, and then it just went right out of my brain. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so Wilkes is invisible, and they're going to try to bring him back, and there's a whole big thing, and they ask him, what happened when this whole thing went down, and he talks about how Whitney Frost was there, and how she said that she knows more about Zero Matter than anybody. And so this, makes them investigate Whitney Frost, and they actually find out in her backstory that she is a crazy inventor, and Whitney Frost is just her stage name, and she invented all this stuff during the war, and actually the thing that she invented is a real thing that a real actress invented, and it's currently used in Bluetooth.
I mean, what a story that you go from like this wartime female inventor, and then like actresses of your time. Like, talk about striking it hot. Like, let's just talk about how great a career Whitney Frost has had. She should be very proud for her.
Well, she should be, and at the same time, like, I understand why she's dissatisfied. Like, she wants to be in the spotlight, and a female scientist probably wasn't being taken seriously, even though she worked. Like, it's the story from season 1, all that whole idea of how Peggy was taken really seriously during the war, and then all of a sudden the war ends and all the men come back to their jobs, and now she's not being taken seriously anymore. I mean, Whitney Frost is literally science Peggy.
Yeah.
Only she doesn't take it very well.
No.
And we do actually finally get a look at how the relationship between Whitney Frost and her husband works, in that she's most definitely the brains behind everything. Not only is she the brains behind Isodyne, she's also in control of their marriage.
Yeah. I mean, she's a femme fatale.
She is totally a femme fatale, yeah. And a sympathetic one, honestly.
Yeah, like, I don't hate her. Whitney Frost, as I predicted, absorbed the Zero Matter into her body, and you could see it. It's just like chilling in that scar that she has, that her bangs just perfectly lay over. And, she is interrogated pretty much by Peggy. And then her studio wants to, where actors were actually under contract by just one studio. So if your studio dropped you, you're kind of like up a creek without a paddle. And I don't know if he's like the director or the producer or whatever, guy comes in and he's like, well, if they were going to fire you, then I'm going to walk. And like, he does this thing. And of course he like makes a move on her and she goes to push him away. And she like kills him but absorbs him too by
she
touching
worse
him
than
too
kills
much.
him. She worse
Yeah.
than kills him.
So then she goes home to her husband and she's all concerned about Peggy. Peggy came and she harassed her, she threatened her, and he's like, it's not a big deal. I mean, it's, you know, don't worry about it. It'll be all done. And she wants like the family hitman. Like I guess they have like a hitman on retainer.
He's our hitman on retainer. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And she goes, Hank needs to kill her. And the husband's like, that's stupid, don't be rude. And then all of a sudden just the theatric cries and her husband is like, yes, I'll call him right now. Peggy Carter will never talk to you. You'll never hear her name. You'll never see her again. And
yeah, exactly. And then the hitman goes after her and
didn't
she's
work.
sparring, and it did not work.
No, it did not work very well for
No.
the hitman.
No, not at all. She falls into the pool and gets away from him, and then Jarvis hits him with something, and then she shoots him.
And then I love the following day after Peggy is attacked at the Stark mansion, Jarvis installs a security system, which is his voice being like, someone has entered the house. It's like no panic at all. And I thought that was a great little Jarvis moment. There wasn't a lot of Jarvis.
No, there wasn't a lot of Jarvis
in this episode. So
I mean, I think it's a fun episode.
Yeah. I mean, Howard Stark comes back and it's always fun to see Howard Stark. But I mean, I think that pretty much episode.
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole episode and everything that happens. I liked it. I mean, we're in the middle of the season, so it's going to be a little, you know.
Is it 8 or 6 episodes?
It's 10.
Oh, okay.
Over 9 weeks.
I thought it was 10 over 7 weeks.
Oh yeah, 10 over 7 weeks. Sorry, my bad. I knew there's going to be 3 two-parter nights, so I assumed the premiere, the finale, and somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll be getting. We'll have 5 more weeks of Agent Carter. But yeah, so we're very much in sort of like the building up the suspense. It's not going to get really interesting for another like 2 or 3 episodes. I'd say at least 3 episodes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like right now we're just like getting all the intel. We're, you know, getting it all, and then something has to happen. Like Dottie's probably gonna like show up at some point, and she's gonna be like besties with Whitney, and they're gonna like, I don't know.
Yeah, Dottie is gonna have to show back up again because she's involved with this organization. Like not involved with the organization, but she was trying to steal from the organization. There's some organizations are butting heads.
So maybe Dottie's gonna come in and actually help Peggy because they have like an equal enemy.
Maybe. It's definitely, I think that's definitely possible. I could see Dottie like showing up in the last episode, saving Peggy's life, and then running off.
Yeah. I mean,
she obviously has some sort of connection to Peggy. Like
I think Dottie respects Peggy.
I don't know if it's respect or if it's it might be respect. It's sort of, I think it's a weird kind of respect though. It's like it's sort of like, oh, I've met my match and isn't this fun? She's an adversary. But I also think she's a little fascinated by her.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's a foundation of respect. I think there's more of a fascination with Dottie with Peggy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even with Peggy with Dottie, she wants to know more about why Dottie is the way she is, which is the Red Room, but no one really knows anything about the Red Room. Besides that, there's a place called the Red Room.
Right, exactly. Like they don't know very much. We know more actually than they do, I think, because we just have the mythology of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean that's essentially the episode, and I'm interested to see where the season's going. I saw a comment from someone earlier today. They were saying they thought season 1 was better because you didn't know anything about Leviathan, whereas this season you know a lot about, like, we're in with the villain.
Mm.
And I can see where they're coming from, but I disagree. I think this season we're actually going to have a sympathetic villain in Madame Mask / Whitney Frost.
Mm-hmm.
But also the bigger villain is, the little club.
Is it like the Armory Club or
I don't
something?
remember. I was paying attention, but not enough to
Because like the little symbol's like two guns, like boop boop.
Armor Club or
I think it's the Armor Club or something.
maybe it's something with an A. Either way,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes, and whether or not Jack will actually get any redeeming qualities.
I'm really rooting for Jack this season. And
I mean, he's obviously not a bad guy. I did like his one line where, the FBI dude said something like, "You'll be doing a great service to America," or something like that. And he was like, "That's all I've ever wanted."
yeah. I mean, there's a
I
bit of
think he's a good guy. He's just really bad at it.
I mean, there's just a bit of sadness when it comes to Jack. Like I just see like a little sad cloud over his head all the time. So I don't know.
I just see a guy who's an asshole who needs to redeem himself quickly, or I'm really not going to like him.
Mm.
Anywho, so that about wraps it up for this show. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
No.
No? All right, me neither. Agent Carter airs Tuesday nights at 9 p.m. on ABC, taking the place of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the interim. This show airs whenever we decide that it airs, so you better follow us on Twitter to find out. You can follow me at Tricia Ennis. You can follow Kate at Kate Calabro. You can follow the website at allgeek2me.net. Hashtag 2chicks1show. Leave us your comments, questions, suggestions, ideas, theories, whatever you want. No spoilers. To a degree. We're spoilery.
You can't really, but how could you spoil this?
Because we could be avoiding all conversation about this. You're mostly avoiding spoilers for Outlander before we do it.
Yeah, but there's books. There's no like source material with
This
this.
is true, but there's still spoilers. Anyway, so whatever. Just leave a comment. We like to hear from you guys, unless you're being jerks, and then we'll hear from you, but we'll laugh at you behind the scenes. So we will see you guys next time. So long.
See ya.